Welcome, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar, How to Build a Natural Products Manufacturing Business. We are going to give it a few minutes here as folks trickle in. If you could introduce yourself in the chat and make sure the dropdown is host and panelist so we can all see your message, and maybe let us know where you're tuning in from. And maybe what you're hoping to get out of today's webinar. I am tuning in here from Portland, Oregon, where we are definitely entering into the fall zone. Hi, Deborah. Hey, Michael. Oh, that's so awesome you're here, Michael, to offer your support. Hi, Chloe. Good to see you. Hi, Audra. Lake Tahoe, California. Good. Give it a few minutes more here, just as people trickle in. Thank you all for being here. Welcome, welcome. New Jersey. Insight on how to expand your business. That's awesome. Hi, Vanessa. Hi, Taylor. From Oregon, another Oregonian. All right. Well, as folks continue to trickle in here, go ahead and just continue to introduce yourself in the chat, but we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome again to How to Build a Natural Products Manufacturing Business. We're so happy that you are all here. And I am Felicia Royce. I am the Director of Alumni and Career Services here with ACHS. I am being joined today by Catherine Swery. Catherine's going to be in the background, just here to assist with any technology issues. You may see her in the chat typing in different links as they come up. So if you have any technology needs, let us know. And I always like to start with our mission. ACHS's mission is to lead the advancement of evidence-based integrative health and wellness education through experiential online learning and sustainable practices. And just a quick agenda before we get started here today. Some general housekeeping. You will see that you're not able to unmute yourself, and that's just because we do record this and send this out to everyone who's registered, and we do post this on our webinar page on our website as well. So we keep everything muted just for that reason. But we also really want this to be a really interactive experience. And so please post your questions, your comments, anything that you want to say in the chat. I will be monitoring the chat during the whole webinar, and we really want to make this fun. So we have one panelist today. We are going to be doing an interview process where I'll be asking some questions, and we'll be getting a lot of great insight from our panelists. And then we'll have some time at the end for some Q&A. So if you have any burning questions that you want to ask, we will have some time for that. This could be a half-an-hour webinar. It could go as long as an hour, but it will not exceed an hour. And like I'd mentioned before, the webinar will be recorded and emailed. So if you have to duck out early, no worries, you will receive a recording of this. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to Stephanie Hardie, one of our wonderful alumni here. And Stephanie, yeah, if you want to just go ahead and give us a brief introduction, that would be great.
Yeah, first of all, hi everyone. Hope everyone is doing well, and thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm super excited to be here with you guys and Felicia to kind of chat about this. So again, my name is Stephanie. I am the owner and operator of Gate and Garden Herbal Apothecary. I myself am based on the South Shore of Massachusetts, so also very much into fall right now. As the sole owner and operator, I manufacture herbal products, and new this year also started working with clients. I graduated in August of 2023 from the Masters in Health and Wellness program from ACHS, which was a phenomenal journey and opportunity. and I'm super excited to be here with all of you guys.
Yay. Well, we're so happy to have you here, Stephanie. Thank you for volunteering your time. I know a lot of students and alumni that are tuning in really want to open their own businesses or maybe own their own businesses. And so this is going to be really important information for them. So let's just kind of get into the questions. And again, to everyone that's tuned in here, I'd love to hear any questions that you have as we start this conversation. So please be as interactive as you'd like. So the first question today is, what inspired you to open your own natural products business?
Yeah, so I always tell people, I started as an herbalist first and a business owner second. So I have been involved in the integrative medicine and kind of like holistic medicine world for quite some time. My bachelor's is in holistic psychology and mental health counseling. And so somewhere along that journey, I got really into the herbalism piece of integrative medicine and was making remedies and little knickknacks and potions for friends, family, and community members. And the more I kind of kept doing that, folks had more and more success and kind things to say about what I was making and what I was offering to them. And so it reached a point where it felt right to sort of increase access. And that's when I really started to think about actually turning it into a legitimate business and started to put the pieces in place to do that.
Awesome. And we'll talk more about what those pieces look like as we continue here. I'd like to know from everyone in attendance, what inspires you to want to go into natural products? I always like to hear from everyone what your passion is and what you're trying to do within your communities. So feel free to type that in the chat. So second question, what were some of the most helpful resources that you used when building your business?
Yeah, so I had already started my business as a legitimate venture before, well, I would actually say kind of simultaneously as when I started the program at ACHS, which was a lot to take on all at one time. But it was a huge resource. ACHS has so many great courses and the micro credentials, and even just your professors are some of the most intelligent people I've ever talked to. And they have such a wealth of information. So, obviously, a big shout out to the school and you guys. The library is a great resource. But a lot of sort of other sort of small business folks in my community were people that I tried to connect with and talk to and form relationships with because, again, I was an herbalist first and a business owner second. And so the business piece was what I felt I really needed the most support with. I felt like I was pretty well versed in formulations and that side of things. And so learning more about business ownership was harder. And so I looked for a lot of community resources like networking groups, my local chamber of commerce, other small business owners as a really, big resource to lean on.
Yeah, that networking piece is so important. And your local chamber of commerce is a great place to start because even if you're not connecting with other herbalists or holistic health
Which
practitioners,
is likely.
it's likely, right? Because it is so niche, but it's a way for you to let people know what you have to offer. And everyone talks, right? So everyone's like, oh, I noticed you've been healthier lately and happier. What's your secret? And oh, well, I'm working with Stephanie. And so, I mean, word travels a long way. So I really appreciate you talking about that networking piece. Do you mind? I know we don't have a slide on this, but do you mind talking at all about the mentorship program that you went through with ACHS and how
Oh my
that
gosh.
impacted you?
Of course, yeah. I'm always happy to, again, I sing ACHS's praises wherever and however I can. So I was fortunate enough to be part of the mentorship program, and I saw my mentor here, Michael, pop in early. And that was such an excellent, excellent program. It was a really great way to talk to somebody who's so well versed in this work Again, all those resources are excellent, but like you said, herbalism or, natural product manufacturing is so niche. And so it's hard to find somebody who does exactly this to kind of pick their brain and figure out how the nuanced pieces of this kind of business works. And so meeting with Michael and talking with him, as somebody who's been doing this for such a long time, there are so many great little nuggets of insight and helpful information and resources that he was able to provide because he's lived these experiences and has encountered things that I hadn't even thought of yet. And so that was a huge, huge piece of it too. And I found that so incredibly beneficial.
Yeah, definitely. And for those attending today that don't know about the mentorship program, just a little tidbit on that. We have a mentorship program that's free. It's volunteer based. Our wonderful alumni volunteer their time to meet with a current student, maybe toward the end of their program as they're really putting some of their knowledge into practice. Or maybe like a new alumni that just graduated. We have an application process and a pairing process, and then you work together throughout a 12-week semester to really set and meet some goals. So it's a really cool program, and Stephanie and Michael were a part of that program. And so I really appreciate you talking about that because I think it can be really helpful to tap into any resources that you possibly can, especially those that don't have a big price tag attached to them.
Oh my gosh, absolutely.
Yes, yes. Okay, and thank you everyone for all of your wonderful comments in the chat. This is super cool to see what is inspiring everybody. So moving on, we talked a little bit about networking. Maybe we can get a little more specific about what are some techniques you used? How have you continued to harness, networking techniques now that you are a business owner and you're in a different space than you were when you were just setting things up?
Definitely. Yeah. So kind of now having the business and networking is never a piece of the business that's ever going to go away. You're always going to need it in some shape or form, regardless of what stage you're in. So, as far as kind of now being in the business and starting off too, one of the most impactful things I did and that you could probably do is really just to get out in your local community. Word of mouth, consumer education, and being in front of the people that you see every day, um, is huge. Because like you said, Felicia, people talk, and so um, I think one of the first like markets I ever did was just my local farmers market, and you know, I met hundreds of people. Now, I live in a larger town. I'm not in a super rural area, but even still, you might meet and talk to 10 people that you've never talked to before. Those 10 people, if they like what you do, might go tell 10 more people. um, and so really trying to find ways to get out in your local community in different ways, early on was kind of one of the biggest things that I leaned on. So like I said, either like those local farmers markets, or I would try to connect with other sort of adjacent businesses. Like there's a yoga studio around the corner from me. So they were a great resource to either put my cards in or even some of my products. Um, there's a little like natural food store in my town that was another kind of place that I was like, hey, like, do you want to be my friend? So kind of just like getting out and showing your face to your community in different ways was really helpful. Additionally, as a millennial, I'm fairly well versed in technology, although not fantastic, but enough to get by. And establishing a strong online presence really helped a lot too, because it gave somebody looking for me and what I did kind of a place to land if they were looking.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Those are great tips. Um, since this is a webinar that's really focused on natural products manufacturing, which is pretty specific,
Yeah.
um, can you talk a little bit about how you got started with that? Like thinking about the farmers market, did you have a table that you had products on, and are you selling products at this point in your community? Like, how did you kind of get started with the product side of
Mhm.
things?
Yeah, so I had been making, like I said, I was making products kind of for friends and family members, very, very small scale, right? Like I would make like two chapsticks and I'd give one to my sister and one to my mom. Or, I would make like a cut and scrape salad that I gave to my dad, who's a contractor, and maybe one for his employee or whatever. Um, so I was kind of already making things. And I had taken some like self-paced courses through other places that kind of had other communities. So there was some other resources that I was able to look at as far as like where to source tins or bottles or jars. But a lot of those you can find in a lot of places. So I was kind of already making things. So my very first market I did have products on the table. It was very limited. I started with, I think, just 3 products. Very, very simple. Again, like a chapstick, a salve, and an oil, and some business cards. And that was kind of all I had. But because I was so knowledgeable and passionate about what I did, just talking to people made the biggest impact. And I think, again, I'm such a big proponent of consumer education because what we do is so niche. And so, if you're really passionate about this and you love what you do and you wholeheartedly believe in what you make, that comes through when you talk to people, and that means a lot to them. And so, they're, sort of a lot more inclined to keep talking to you and then possibly convert to a customer. That being said, you can start super grassroots, and if all you have is a business card and maybe one product, go for it. See what happens. Talk to people. You know what I mean? There's a lot of ways to do stuff.
That's such excellent advice because in my role, when I talk to entrepreneurs that are wanting to get started, I feel like there is a general theme that people feel like they have to have this huge line of like, here's all of the things that I provide to my community, or here's all the things that I've made. And that's great, but there's a lot that goes into that, right? Like labeling and cost and, of building those products. And there's just a lot that goes into that. So it's something that really should be looked at as something you build on over time. And I think it's great advice to say, if you have one product you believe in and that really knows, helps people and is more general and can help a lot of different people with
Hmm.
different things, start there. Like there's nothing saying that you have to have a whole skincare line to be able to, step into this field. So I think that's really, really excellent advice there. Uh,
Yeah, absolutely. What I started with and what I have now are two completely different things, and it's just been through this long journey that I've been on. So starting small is a-okay and probably a better way to go.
Yeah. This, you may not know this off the top of your head, or like I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, but for those that are looking for natural products manufacturing, you know, uh, equipment like bottles and
Mhm.
different things, do you have like a specific company that you use? Or I remember the first time I ever met with you and your background, it was just tons and tons and tons of like all of this awesome product.
Oh, it's
I
still
still
there to
remember
the dog
that.
today.
So, can you point anyone in a direction of maybe a company that you've relied on for those products?
Yeah, it really depends on, I'm very persnickety about my packaging, and so I use a couple different companies depending on the packaging that I'm looking for. But a lot of big ones that will come up if you look for them that I have personally used and have had good quality and experiences with. Birch Bottle is a good one. They are US based. Premium Vials is another one that I'll use for some specific packaging. Um, there are some things I don't love using them, but there are some things that I'll get on Amazon, if the price is right and it makes sense. And I think that's kind of where I started with a lot of stuff too, is just like getting a couple things, on Amazon, but you'll be able to find better pricing somewhere else. I think I'm trying to think of other ones that I've used. SKS Bottles is
Yes,
another one.
I've heard of that
Um,
one. Actually, I just heard of that one from Professor Latin.
mm,
Um,
oh,
I've heard good things about that specific company.
Yeah, definitely. And I can send you like a list of all of these if there's somewhere that you want to put this somewhere somehow.
You said it's SKS, right?
Yep.
And then Birch, and what was the other one that you said?
Premium vials.
Premium.
And those should all just kind of pop up if you Google them. They're larger manufacturing companies, so they should pop up pretty quick on Google.
Okay, cool. So yeah, and I will definitely send out some for those who are wanting this information, I can compile this and send it out after the webinar as well. Thank you. I know I threw a lot of questions at you that were not networking related, but I
And
thought
that's fine.
important to cover. So let's continue on here. So what is one hurdle or challenge that you have faced as a business owner?
Oh, I think one of the things that kind of comes up probably for every small business owner is the financial piece of this. And I think that's an obvious answer. So I'll kind of offer you something else. And it's something that I truly struggled with and sometimes still do. There's a really different experience and dynamic that comes from turning something that is just your passion and a hobby that you like to something that now has financial responsibility and your livelihood riding on it. Um, and I think that's something that I talk to people a lot when they're kind of reaching out to me about turning this thing that they love into a business venture is you have to really be okay with the fact that if it's successful, it's not going to be the same fun little hobby anymore. And if you're willing to do the not fun parts of the work, like, admin and CGMP paperwork and um, billing or ordering inventory or, sort of all that mishmash that comes with making the fun potions, because that's the fun part, right? You have to really be okay with doing all of that and doing it all 100%. And so sometimes, the work life balance can get kind of tough, and doing what you love as a business is both a blessing and sometimes a curse. So I think that's actually a really um, interesting piece that I kind of tend to struggle with that isn't talked about a lot because it's not kind of the first thing that people think of when they think of this. They just think, oh my gosh, this is going to be great. And it is, generally speaking. But there are certainly times when I catch myself being like, oh my God, like, why am I doing this? This was just like a fun hobby that I just like enjoyed. And now it's my whole life.
Yeah. And as a business owner, you can't clock out, right?
No.
So that is really important to consider that everything is kind of riding on your business, right? Like your financial freedom and having to, I'm sure, like look at the financial projections, right? And like what you need to cover your business
Yeah.
expenses and then what you need to come in and then actually, support yourself with. And I think that piece definitely, we don't talk about that enough. And I think it is really important to think about that and to have a really clear plan and really look at those financials and think about things like, things you may not think about when you have to run a business, like your additional energy costs or your printer ink or,
Yeah.
these things that add up over time, your labeling system, that maybe you didn't think about, before you actually open the doors. Um, yeah, no, that's really helpful. Um, just checking here to see if anyone has any questions so far. And there was one question about Etsy. Do you have any experience with Etsy or have you
I
been?
don't. So I started off kind of really DIYing everything, and I tried to do a lot of stuff myself, mostly just from a financial standpoint. I started everything very, very grassroots. And so the least amount of money that I could spend as possible in the beginning is what I chose to do. And so I think they still do. I'd have to double check though. But I do all of my own like website hosting and everything, and I do it all through Square. I don't get anything for that recommendation. That's just what I use because they had a free option. Which again, I'd have to check if they still do, but they did when I started. And so they had free website hosting where you could have a very simple website And it was like minimal transaction fees when people purchased a product, which was lower than what Etsy fees were at the time. And so that felt like less risky to me when I started. And so that's what I did. So I don't know a ton about Etsy. I have friends that use it, and I don't always have the greatest feedback that I hear from them. And so I didn't personally go that route. But exposure can be really good there. So it's really to each their own.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. And I think to answer your question about the Square site, I do believe they still offer
Mhm.
like a free landing page
Yep.
through Square. So if that's something anyone's interested in that grassroots, beginning stages where you don't need a really intricate website, that would be a good place to start. Um, there was another question from Lauren that says, do you find that the culture in Massachusetts, is hard as far as education and gaining acceptance of herbal products, um, other than skincare? When I mention herbal medicine, people think that I'm talking about supplements at like Walmart or CVS. Can you talk a little bit about the landscape where you live and what the kind of culture is around herbal medicine, and maybe some challenges and some wins that you've had bringing this to your community?
Absolutely. So where I am in Massachusetts, I'm about 20 minutes south of Boston, which, if you are familiar at all, is literally like the conventional medicine capital of the world. We have like Harvard Med School, we have MIT, Beth Israel, we have all these huge, huge conventional medicine conglomerates basically right in my backyard. um, and yet, there are pockets of places where I live where this kind of integrative alternative medicine sphere is actually pretty popular. And it's gaining a lot of momentum in the public eye too. I know places like even Dana-Farber in Boston has some like integrative modalities in their cancer department. And so it's a weird double-edged sword, because on one side of the coin, there is not a lot of understanding about what I do or how I do it. Um, but once you kind of talk to people, and again, this is where I really champion consumer education and being an ethical and responsible manufacturer or just herbalist, and having a dedication and knowing your craft backwards, forwards, and sideways. Um, People either come to a better understanding of what it is that you do, um, or at the very least are like, well, that's interesting. I'm gonna go Google that later. um, and I've had truly both kinds of experiences where I've talked to people and they've been on one side of that, where they're like, why don't you just go to Boston for your doctor's appointment? And there's again definitely pockets of places where I am that are actually very, very accepting of this and kind of what it is and what I do. So there's honestly both. And I would assume it's probably like that in a lot of places too.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. And I think it kind of connects back to the networking piece. People don't know what they don't know, right? And
Right.
so I think the more you can get out into the community and educate the community and show how this modality can be really beneficial to supporting health and wellness, the more you can talk about it, strike up that conversation in the grocery store, those conversations go a long way. So thank you so much for sharing. And I'm going to continue on with some of these questions here with the next slide, but we'll go ahead and go to the next slide. Oops. Um, so we had had a question about labeling.
Mhm.
So let's start with kind of, I'm going to ask this question, you can kind of answer it, and then we'll go into some of the questions that popped up in the chat. Um, how have you implemented good manufacturing practices into your business?
Yes. So, I know you and I have kind of discussed this a lot, and I always kind of tell people the same thing. Again, because I started very, very grassroots. I didn't have a lot of capital, or like actually literally any at all when I started, and everything I did was just very kind of pieced together. CGMPs are very important, and it is it behooves all of us to follow them and to do our best. That being said, um, I like to hold space and honor the fact that for somebody, especially just a single person, this feels super overwhelming at the beginning, and it's okay to feel like that because it is, and I definitely felt like that too. Um, there are many times where starting off, you will not start off CGMP compliant. And in some regards, that may be okay as long as, big asterisk there, you make a commitment to continue to strive for CGMP compliance with every step you take. That was my personal path. I kind of did what I could at the beginning and made a little bit of money and it immediately invested that right back into trying to be more CGMP compliant. Would do a little bit more and would make a little bit more money and would immediately invest that into trying to be more CGMP compliant. So I think as long as you are dedicated to getting there and you take the necessary precautions at the beginning. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't, give any of that particular advice, but there are some protections you can take, like insurance or how you structure your business. And as long as you make that dedication to strive towards CGMP compliant, just do your best, and you'll get there.
Yeah, and maybe lean on the resources that you do have available, right?
Absolutely.
So there's some helpful resource links that we can put in the chat as well. The American Herbalist Guild has a really great legal FAQ and labeling, product labeling whole section on their
Mhm.
website that I find to be really helpful. And then we actually have a course that you can sign up with. I don't believe there's a fee associated with that. But it goes into FDA compliance as well. And I know you're not dealing in like supplements, right? Or are you?
Not like capsules, but the FDA categorizes ingestibles, so like tinctures, as
Gotcha.
supplements. Anything topical, the FDA categorizes as cosmetics, and so kind of yes.
So it's important to understand the difference between the two,
Yes.
right? And so looking into the FDA regulations and looking at the legal
Mhm.
FAQs that are out there, I think can be really helpful. And honestly, like when in doubt, get that legal advice, right? Because
Absolutely.
it's worth the couple $100s that you pay to talk to a legal professional that specializes in employment and small business in your area. So
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll also add too, because there's definitely lawyers that specialize in small business. There's not a lot of folks that specialize in what we do. And so I literally like brought a bunch of information that I pulled directly from the FDA's website and brought it to somebody, and I was like, help me figure out what this means. Because this is in like really big sort of jargony words, and a professional or like a lawyer kind of helped me look at the FDA's actual website, and kind of helped translate, for lack of a better term, what it all meant and what I could do and how I could do it. Um, so honestly, actually, the FDA's website is another really, really great resource, and I recommend looking at all of their information too. It's a lot to get through, but they have everything there truly spelled out for us.
yeah, no, it's great advice. Great advice. Could you talk a little bit, and you don't have to necessarily give specific examples, but obviously you're making products. And so when you're looking at procuring your herbs and your, everything that you use that go into the products, do you have like requirements that you check off? Like, do you have a specific, place that you go to get your products? Is it important to you to use only organic? Like, can you talk a little bit about how you obtain your products? And again, what you're comfortable sharing, of course.
Of course, yeah. So I joke with people that I do everything the hardest way possible. So I grow or forage, I would say probably 80% to 90% of the herbs that I use. This is more difficult for product manufacturing, not just because you have to grow the herbs, but also because there's a lot more paperwork involved. That being said, it is easier to source bulk herbs from a supplier because you'll just get a bag of herbs that you know is standardized quality with a batch number, and you go from there. So I know a lot of like the big names like Star West Botanicals, Mountain Rose Herbs, Frontier Co-op. These are like larger companies that specialize in good quality bulk herbs. And a lot of those places will offer them in different size denominations. So you don't have to buy like 10 pounds of something when you're just starting off and now you're stuck with 10 pounds of something.
Yeah.
Um, so there's different ways to do it. Again, I personally grow or forage a lot of what I use because that's kind of my ethos and my beliefs um, about how that kind of medicine is made. I also have a really strong um, sustainability component to my business and bioregional component to my business, and so that's partially why I do that. But that's not to say that it can't be done a different and again easier way because there is.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. And I don't know if I actually knew that. After all the time we've spoken, I didn't know that you grew and foraged your own products.
Yeah.
It's really cool to know. Do you mind talking at all about how you kind of set up like your business logo and like maybe some resources that you used? I know a lot of business owners use things like Canvas,
Mhm.
or they might hire an artist. How did you go about setting up your logo and labeling and that type of thing?
Yeah, so as far as like design principles or logo or that or like the aesthetic of what I do, I was always kind of like an artsy kid. And so a lot of that design I just did and would kind of transfer into digital files. But I will also say Canva is a huge resource, and I use that for almost everything from like email templates to label design to social media posts and kind of everything in between. I love Canva. And again, I get nothing from telling you that except for that I genuinely like using their platform. And there's also a free and paid version of that too. So when you're starting off, like just use the free version. You can do a ton with that. Um, so that was a big one that I rely on a lot. As far as the actual like physical labels, there are a few different ways you can do stuff. If you have a robust home printer, you can print them at home. I did not at the beginning, and so I would use companies like Avery or like Sticker App to do certain like mail away or like print on demand or like custom printing labels. Again, you're gonna kind of have to find what works for you. Some places will have like an order minimum, some places will let you do custom sizing. Again, I'm incredibly persnickety about how my things look. Like that's a big part of what I do. And so I just researched a ton until I found those websites or places that worked for my very specific needs, which are probably different than yours.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful though. Thank you so much for sharing that. And Stephanie had a question. And Stephanie, I may need to kind of follow up with you directly after the webinar because some of this might, be specific to where you live.
Sure.
But Stephanie had asked about proprietary blends approved by the GMP. What I can say about some of the proprietary blend, the way that entrepreneurs will go about this sometimes is they will use something called white labeling. I'm sure most of you have heard about that, right? Where you work with a company and then they kind of take on your product, right? And do the labeling process for you. So that is very specific to where you live because there are local
Mhm.
white labeling companies. And so, Stephanie, with your specific questions, I want to make sure that I follow up with you and give you the resources that you need. So just wanted to address that really quick. Let's see if there are any other questions. I think some of these can wait until the FAQ. So let's go ahead and move along here. So what changes or pivots have you made along the way as a business owner?
Yeah, so I started just as a product maker. And I was happy doing that and I love doing that and I still love doing that. Um, but I got to a point where I really felt like there was a call for more, and there are other ways that I really wanted to support people. And so through the mentorship program there at ACHS and working with Michael, I expanded into also doing like clinical consultations and also coaching. Since my graduation, I've gone on to do additional credentialing through the National Board for Health and Wellness Coaches, and I'm working towards board certification for that. And so that was kind of a little bit of a pivot that was necessary, not only from partially a financial standpoint and complete transparency, but also because, again, I wanted to support my community and the people that I work with and talk to often in a different way. Um, I got to a point where there were some folks that I would talk to frequently where I felt limited in just the offerings that I had for, general sale. And I knew that I could do more to support them if I had the right infrastructure to do it. And so I kind of, headed towards that to do that. So I think that's kind of been not only a financial pivot of the business, but also like a personal one as well.
Yeah. It's so cool to think about this grassroots, few products, the chapstick you're making and giving
Yeah.
away to family and friends, to where you're at now, where you're incorporating more of the coaching and consulting, and just to like watch that process over the last year has been really awesome. And I really appreciate you sharing that. And it's a great reminder to people that you just have to start somewhere, right? Like you don't have to have it all figured out today. You don't have to have this perfect thing. It can just, build on itself over time. And you can continue to add credentials and continue to learn and look at the research.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And arguably, whether you have a plan or not, what's that saying? The only thing like sure about plans is that they're never sure. I thought I had, and I always think I have these plans. I'm a very sort of type A personality, and it always I surprise myself by either how far outside of that plan I end up, or looking back 4 years ago from where I started to like what things are now, and I would never have thought this is what it would turn into, but I'm so happy that it did. And I really like your comment because I think that really kind of highlights to just enjoy the journey of all of this and just kind of enjoy where you go.
Yeah. Sometimes it's hard to see our progress when we're in the middle of it, right? So it's always nice to have somebody to remind you of how far you've come. So
Yeah, absolutely.
awesome. So I believe this is our last question. Could you share a tip on how to promote a new or existing business? What's worked well for you, and anything that you want to share with the group?
I'm sure I sound like a broken record, but again, anything that you can do to network in your community. And I say the word community, and I mean that in however and whatever that means to you too. Whether that be in person at your local farmers market or online spaces like Facebook groups you're a part of that may or may not have actually anything to do with herbalism. Some people are in like parenting Facebook groups or like a craft Facebook groups, any of those things. So really any kind of community where you can show up and confidently talk about yourself and make genuine connections with other human beings is in some way, shape, or form going to help you and your business. Because again, when people talk to you and they see how passionate and how well informed you are and how much you love what you do, it's really infectious. And so, again, those people are going to want to talk to other people about it. So, the more that you can do to show up in every single way that that phrase could ever possibly mean um, will really help to promote. So, in person events, um, so a lot of towns will have like wellness fairs through like your local police or fire department, um, online spaces, whether that be Etsy or a website or a Facebook or an Instagram or even just an email. All of these spaces are ways to promote yourself and your business and what you do and what you love.
Awesome. Well said. There is also there's a organization called Herb Rally. I don't know if anyone's heard of it. Sometimes their website's not super updated, but you can find herbal medicine specific and product specific events in your local area. So it's Herb Rally. I put it in the chat here. And then also Seed Your Future is another one that comes to mind. But any way that you can get involved, Herbalists Without Borders is another great, being a part of our mentorship program. Any way that you can really, work to network and promote what you're doing, because you're one herbalist and you have a unique perspective and you're doing something different than maybe the herbalist near you, right? We all have our different flavor of what we offer, and it's all unique. And so I think we can also band together as professionals. So very well said. And then Taisha had asked, are you in stores or just online?
Both. So I do wholesale to some shops, and I also sell online and in person at various events around New England. So a little bit of everything.
That's awesome. Great. So, thank you so much for answering all of those questions, and some of them completely on the fly. I really
Of
appreciate it.
course.
And yes, this is being recorded, so any of you that need to log off, you will get an email recording of this. But to wrap up, I want to have some live Q&A. I'm going to go back through the chat here and see if there's anything I missed. But any other questions that you might have, please put them in the chat. And this is our opportunity to have kind of a live question and answer session. And then Jeremy had asked about a liquor license. I don't know of a liquor license being needed for tinctures. That would be kind of more of a legal question or like a state specific question. So Jeremy, if you and I maybe could chat at some point after this webinar today, we could look into that together. I'd be happy to help. But I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head. Let's see. Okay, so Jason asked, how or where did you prioritize allocating startup funds or secure these funds to grow the business while expanding outreach?
So again, I started super duper grassroots. And so I started, with whatever kind of funds I personally had that felt sort of, I don't even want to use the word disposable because I didn't have disposable funds for this. But again, because I was kind of making things for my own pleasure or for friends and family members, I would buy like a pack of 5 tins, or if I was making something for like my family, I would ask people to like donate a couple bucks so that they could get something like the finished product in return. So I guess like really small scale crowdsourcing, for lack of a better term. As far as sort of dictating the hierarchy of importance of what to allocate funds towards, I personally prioritized like actual products, and so mostly just like tangible items. So like the actual vessels that the product goes in, whether that be a tin or a bottle or whatever, some type of label that had important information on it so that people knew what was in it and what it was for. And I think like very menial business supplies, like I had business cards that I started off with that I, lumped that into the this feels important category. And like I think I did have to buy a table for like the markets and stuff. So those were like kind of the first purchases that I got. And as I kind of kept going, that I just kind of did more. I'm a big DIYer too. So like I DIYed a ton of stuff, and you can DIY a lot of stuff. Like all of my table displays I built from like scrap wood. You can DIY a lot of cool stuff. So
That's
as long
awesome.
as you have the things that are like necessary for clean and sanitary product making. The rest you can kind of figure out.
Yeah, yeah. I'm very jealous of that skill, Stephanie. It's a great skill to have. Um, Vanessa asked, how long did you attend school to get where you are today?
That's a loaded question. Because I've done a little bit of everything, and I really feel like almost all of my life, bits and pieces of it have contributed to where I am. So again, like my undergrad is in mental health counseling, and that was a field I worked in for quite a while, and that gave me a lot of skills, right? Working with people, listening to them. Um, I did a lot of self-study for a long time. I'm also an avid gardener and grower, and so that informed a lot of my practice about plants and knowing about them. I did some like single courses with some like larger named places, just like online. I did an in-person apprenticeship out in Western Mass, kind of near me, and then kind of all culminating with my master's through ACHS. So it's been a little bit of everything, and altogether, that's taken me a decade, but that doesn't mean that that's what it has to take you. You know what I mean? I think as long as you're confident with your abilities and you've done more than like a weekend course or something, you know what I mean? Like you want to be well informed if you're charging money for something and giving it to the general population, like that has to be safe. But that doesn't mean that you need, 2 decades worth of experience to be worthy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I feel like your education has kind of followed you through the expansion of your business too. Yeah, so you kind of figure that out. Like, what else do I need to, like, you're integrating
Exactly.
that consulting piece and wanting to inform yourself about how to coach effectively. And yeah, that's wonderful. And then the last question we have here, and I can help with this a little bit maybe too. Any advice for networking and getting yourself out there for introverts?
Oh, yeah, because that's me. You can't tell, but I've been having a panic attack this entire webinar. Uh,
Tell it all.
uh, it's I think one of the things that just really helped me was truly how much I love what I do. It's really hard for me to kind of put myself out there, but this is the one area of my life where I could talk for hours and hours about to anybody who would listen. Because I truly believe in it. I truly love it. And I truly think people deserve to know about this. And so I think really just leaning on, your passion and how much genuine care you have for this field, and I would wager other people's well-being too, can kind of help with that. If it helps, maybe start really small or start in places that are a little safer, I guess, for lack of a better term, like an online space. It was a long time before I like transitioned to big in-person markets or other stuff like that. Like I started very much kind of like behind a computer screen in little bits and pieces. And eventually, the more I talked to people, the more people were like, "Oh, we want to know about you." So, um, if it feels easier to start in smaller spaces, like a little online group or like on your personal Instagram page, or kind of these smaller pieces, then that can be helpful. But again, I think really focusing on how much you love what you're doing helps too.
Yeah, that's exactly the advice I was going to give. And organic networking, right? So starting with like being with like-minded people, going to those health and wellness events where it's a little easier to have those conversations because other people are excited to talk to you about that as well. That might feel a little safer than walking into a room of nobody that knows anything about the health and wellness or herbal medicine
Yeah.
products and trying to like do your elevator pitch, kind of
Yeah.
start with the smaller steps. Um, yeah. So, yeah. And I think Audra said, I did not anticipate you saying you're an introvert as well. Thank you. These are great tips. And yes, I mean, I didn't know that either. And so I think there's also an element of just, I don't like the phrase fake it till you make it. I actually don't like, I don't love that phrase, but in that same vein, right? Is the more you practice something and say something, and
Yeah.
the more you do it, you build that muscle. So it might feel a little awkward at first, but you'll get there. The first webinar I ever did, I was shaking like a leaf and in
Exactly.
my sleep. So these are great questions, everybody. I really appreciate all your engagement. Just a few pieces of information here as we wrap up. Tomorrow is the application deadline for fall 2. So if you are interested in natural products manufacturing or any of our programs here, take a look and make sure you get that application in by tomorrow. Micro credentials are a great way to build your resume. There is one micro credential that I think would be super applicable to what we're talking about today, and it's our 6-part wellness business operations specialist program. It's phenomenal. It gives you that foundation of everything you need to know to open your own business. So if you want that additional business component of learning, I think that would be a great place to start. We have other micro credentials as well. And then I just want to take a minute again to really thank Stephanie for being here today and sharing all of her wisdom and insight. It's been such a joy to work with you, Stephanie, and to see the evolution of your business and all the great things you're doing for your communities. So round of applause. And I'm sure everyone was stoked to get all of this great advice today. So thank you for that. And I'm always available as a resource, so feel free to reach out. I think Catherine did put in my calendar, so if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we'll see you at the next webinar, and be sure to stay connected. Everyone have a wonderful day. Thank you for being
Thank
here.
you.